Hi, this is Angela Valenti-Romeo. Colliding Worlds Radio and Colliding Worlds TV did a lot of adventuring at the Palm Springs International Film Festival. This is the 26th year for the festival, and it was amazing. The movies, the foreign films were outstanding. The directors, the authors, the actresses we were able to talk with were wonderful. They were very, 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 very interested in Colliding Worlds, just like you all are. And we're going to bring you little bits and pieces of all these interviews. They were wonderful. So stay with us and we'll take you on several amazing journeys. Welcome to Colliding Worlds, an art documentary in a 30-minute format. Come with us as we take you on another journey.
It's almost like dying and being reborn.
If someone came to me right now, I went like, sound in your head is going to get 10 times worse right now this second, but that's it. I'd shake on that and I'd take that.
I did never say to myself, when I am blind, because I refused to believe it was going to happen. The word is worth 500 images because of the way I deal with words.
I don't have that ultimate goal anymore of being in a band, recording our album, heading out on tour, all those things I wanted years ago.
When I got the head injury, that's when there was no middle ground. There was no, well, I call them the mud flaps. Something that you could just hide what's really going on.
I'm just really upset about thinking that maybe images don't matter anymore.
One thing I love the most in the world is also the one thing that's causing me the most pain. So I'm gonna write this song to be as great as I can make it, and it might only be me who hears it.
I'm Erinnisse Rebisz, director and editor on Spirit Will Loss.
And my name is Patryk Rebisz, and I'm a co-director and also director of photography on the same movie. She's my wife. Don't try to steal her.
Welcome to Colliding Worlds. Let's talk about this movie, Spirit Will Loss. I enjoyed it. You had me in at the poster. We can talk about the artwork in a moment, but you found 3 people whose lives revolved around art, and then it was kind of taken away from them, but they seem to have found their path. Why these 3 stories?
It started with a book that I read in 2006, a nonfiction work that collected historic and contemporary stories of artists with, as the author referred to it, as transforming illnesses. And it spoke about how they basically used their art as a way to work through this illness or injury. And I gravitate to these stories for probably a host of reasons that I could maybe drum up from deep in my past that aren't necessary to bring up now. But yeah, it's something I always really gravitated towards. I think that relationship between an artistic process that we can have within ourselves and then what we can create and how we can kind of present that creation to the world and give it to others is a really kind of tremendous force, because it's something that is so personal, and yet it's something that becomes a gift that connects us to the world. So,
what was it about these three stories that said to you, we got to tell them?
Well, what attracted her to those three stories were indeed stories. What attracted me to this film was the formal approach and the form itself, and not just on a quite banal level. Oh, we need certain shots, we need certain coverage, we need certain and what was attractive is how can we actually make a movie into an artwork itself. And of course, it was a very difficult question, because we had a cooperation of the artist, for the artist to collaborate with us and be very willing participants, so that all of a sudden I'm not simply shooting an artist in their studio painting. I'm bringing the artist into a studio filled with lights and crew, and all of a sudden asking them to perform certain things, like laying, let's say, on the floor, or lit only by a TV screen and quite almost naked, or this kind of images. In other words, images that go beyond simple illustrative understanding of what's being said, what's being done. And because of that, also we needed the artist to open up to us. So we would ask about not only the story, like a verbal story, tell us what happened, but rather also we would ask what kind of sounds and sights and smells and feelings they were experiencing. And then we would have to go back into the edit room and ask ourselves, what images spark up, because again, images have to be ultimately tangible. I cannot deal with abstractions when I'm going to the set and trying to direct the crew that's going to be the next shot. And then we'd have to go back to the edit room and ask what images there's going to be. And we would go over tremendous data bank of images would gather through the years and see which images spark up those feelings in us.
there are, tons of stories to have picked from. I mean, there are several like dozens and dozens of potentials that I was researching. Originally, we were thinking the film might include 6 artists in total. But as we were looking for certain qualities, because as he brought up that willingness to open up, that willingness to basically speak to us the way they would to themselves privately in their journal or in the bathroom mirror, I started every introduction, kind of warming up to them, but also pretty soon saying, it's really important that you will talk to me like I'm your bestest friend that you've had for a long, long time.
You're a musician. There's nothing worse for someone with a love of music when they can't even hear themselves. And his story was bittersweet, working on the festival and such. What was it like working with him? Because he seemed to me the most fragile of the 3.
The fragility comes from the fact that, unlike the other 2 artists who in some strange way accepted what has happened to them, so because of that you have the boxer painter who kind of, is actually kind of glad in some strange way that that happened to her, because she found herself ultimately afterwards. I guess that's the most sweet answer of all. The blind photographer, despite of hating being blind, still keeps on producing because she keeps on seeing those images within her head. But that means still she comes from the perspective of acceptance. While the musician, who also runs one of the most successful independent music festivals in Ireland, at the very same time, he's got this fantastic ear, so to speak, to pick up the greatest new up-and-coming talent in the whole country of Ireland. But he's in the process of figuring out what the future brings. And that's one of those interesting things. That's why this fragility that you speak of comes from. In other words, we didn't fully know ourselves where he's going, because quite frankly he doesn't. And that's in a way what makes his story so fascinating.
With this movie, now you're doing the festival. Do you have release for the movie yet?
This is our world premiere. So
yeah,
this is where we start, and then
we finished the film the day before Christmas. We were accepted on a rough cut, and then didn't hear until the beginning of December that we were invited. So, we were picture locking in the beginning of December, and then it was like, nose to the grindstone to get color and sound done. And
that also means that quite hard thankful we are to the documentary programmers here at Palm Springs, because
have the
somehow the vision to see the movie that's not fully finished yet, and somehow they see enough of heart in the film to actually say like, okay, let's give those to a chance.
Where are you going with this after this festival?
There is a whole list of avalanche of festivals
that we've submitted in the last month, so we actually don't know the next.
Because the movie is so still smelling of freshness, taken out of the baking.
Alice, I just thought she was feisty when she was talking about how, oh, I know what it's like to be blind because for 2 weeks I wore a blindfold, and she's like, yeah, that's really nice, but you know, you don't patronize me. I'm not patronizing you. I'm here, and she's going out there and creating, and she's very, very, very creative. But I just enjoyed listening to her speak because she was just so.
You know, Alice is such a lovely example because she really is like, you meet her and she's nothing but the cuddliest, sweetest woman. Like, she's not coming out with quip remarks left and right. I'm sure she, in some respect, when she sees the film today, she'll be here and Katie will be here. And they have not seen the film. They're all coming to the world premiere and experiencing it for the first time. And I think Alice will, in one respect, be slightly caught by surprise, but not because it's not, because it's some way disingenuous of her whatsoever. I think she'll just be surprised that we were able to get that part of her into the film, because it's actually something that she brings out from time to time, and she's very proud of the way that she stands for the perception that people have of her abilities with her blindness and her vision.
She's not a member of the blind photographers. She's a member of the Photographers Club who happen to be blind.
Yes.
But that's a quite fantastic quote on many levels. And one of the things is that those people do not perceive themselves necessarily as disabled. But quite frankly, it's in a big scope of it. It's very nice to say that, but there is something else and much more complex and deeper. And what it ends up being is as follows: is that if you simply show a movie about, oh, they are not blind because, let's say, they can go and get coffee from whatever, or something of this kind, then you're kind of being slightly dishonest. The magic really here is to find those ideas, kind of the ideas that you spoke about, the fact that they're looking at column in a new way, they're looking at the door in a new way, you're looking for certain sounds in a new way. In other words, find the ideas and how their stories and ideas expand your horizon as a fully sighted, your brain fully working.
This became the key, the very key component that brought it outside of that superficial, sympathetic.
It was a beautifully done movie, and I'm hoping that people who see it will walk away with something more than, wow, that felt good. There's a lot there. Each one of these people.
We hope so too.
Each one of these people are amazing in their own right. What you were able to capture, I loved at the very end of the movie where you're showing the stills, and there's one still where I think you're talking to Katie, where you're sitting in the chair and you're like, it's like I'm watching, there's that one photo at the end where it's like, yes, I'm engaging you and I am so interested, because from your profile, you have a smile on your face. It's like, keep going, I'm loving this. And it's stay until the end, watch all the credits roll, and that was one of the best scenes, I have to say, because it made it seem like this wasn't just a job. This was an amazing project.
And it, quite frankly, it does reflect. I mean, there are some trivias that maybe people who are less technically inclined might be interested in. But everything in the film was shot in camera, so every effect you see that you presume it's an effect, kind of done in some kind of digital realm or whatnot. No, it was all done in the camera. So every time you see description, that was done in camera. Every time you see some kind of composite thing, it was done in camera. And I'm quite proud of it, because when you take things when you are forced to work on something tangibly with your hand, so in other words, it goes from your concept to your hands, and then because you have to figure out how to do it in front of the camera, what kind of tools, what kind of etc., and all of a sudden, because of the amount of time you have to spend, because it's not as simple, let me just type into the software some text and here it is magically right away. Because of the amount of time, you really think hard, very hard, to ask yourself, what is behind that effect I'm doing? And because of that, you reach some fantastic answers. One of my favorite examples, there's a sequence of caves where we basically try to talk about where the idea of images comes from, that starts many thousands of years ago. And the idea that the image really doesn't start, in other words, we are by yourself in the caves, and the images come out of your head, and they are almost projected as kind of trance-like, vibe projected on the sides of the walls. However, ultimately, it's only you surrounded by total darkness of the cave and nothing else. And I was asking myself, how can I express that? Is it a way to express that in any kind of way? And what I ended up doing very basic modification to the lens. So there was only an image of the projection was projecting directly into the lens. So the lens was not seeing something, a projection reflected of the surface and then going back into the lens. There was nothing but the projection and the lens. So in that sense, it was the same kind of effect as if the very primal person, the cave painter, was figuring out how to do it.
I think that comes through really well in another segment with Kate, where they're finding all the pieces,
Yes.
but nobody knows what it is, and she can't remember what she did. And when you put it together, you look at these pieces of paper, they're like, oh, they're little nice watercolor black colors. It was a monumental piece to look at fully done.
She did multiple of those pieces where it starts with a little piece of this kind, and she just puts that piece on somewhere on the wall and starts painting.
And the only thing that stops those paintings is she ran out of wall space.
I love it. I love it. But that's what makes her story special. And that's what makes each one of them. Again, this was a very, very well edited movie. It works on so many levels, from the poster all the way down to the end credits. And I do watch the end credits.
Imagine the future where your body renews itself and the aging clock is reversed. The future is here. Introducing FDA-approved Erinnisse Perfector non-surgical face and body lift. Perfector cellular anti-aging face treatment lifts and firms sagging skin, erases wrinkles, diminishes dark spots, and heals acne. Erinnisse body lift will instantly tighten loose skin, diminish cellulite, promote weight loss, and detoxify. Let the transformation begin by healing from within.
We already spoke to the directors and the producers. Now we're going to talk to two other people who are intimately involved in this film. I want to welcome both of you, Katie and Alice, to Colliding Worlds. I thank you for spending some time with us. Katie, when they approached you to work on this project, what was your thoughts?
I really didn't know what they were doing in a way. I didn't know how real it was, because I've been on Dateline, I've been on the front page of the New York Times, I've been interviewed from a lot of places like Holland and Germany and places like that. So I didn't know if they were really for real or not. I was excited to be thought of and to be interviewed, but I really didn't know what the deal was yet.
You were a boxer. Before you were an artist, but you were a boxer. You suffered a traumatic brain injury, and that sort of started a whole new world for you, where you had to relearn everything. And then that led you back to your painting. Mm-hmm. I have to say, there's one scene where they're putting together all these small little pieces of paper, and when it's put together, it is one of the most magnificent murals I have seen in forever and a day. How do you know what you're doing? You said you sort of just start and you go. How do you keep track of all this in your mind?
That mural I made just a couple years after my head injury, and what I found after my head injury, I originally tried to paint like I did before my head injury, where I did a lot of watercolors and stuff, and my brain was very much into the pictures and trying to make them look a certain way. When I did that mural, literally it was piece by piece, and I would just be wanting to have certain images and lines and colors on a piece of paper, and then I would tack another piece of paper onto that and continue the lines. And I had no idea what I was creating. And I knew I was putting maybe I was drawing a horse's head or something, and then the next piece of paper I'd slap on there and finish his head. But I had no idea that it was going to look like it did when it came out, that I had a centaur and fighting over a horse, and that I had a snake that went through the whole thing. I had no idea that's what was coming out.
When you saw the movie for the first time, how did you feel, Katie? Did you feel like they found you?
This movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like they found me, yeah, and they understood me. And I felt that they took the time to get to know the real me. I've been drawing, especially ever since I was a little kid, as soon as I could pick up a crayon. And that drawing has been my savior as long as I can remember. And coming from kind of a dysfunctional family, as most of us do, that was my way of getting my feelings out, was drawing and painting, et cetera, et cetera. And after the head injury, luckily my sister Stephanie remembered that that was an outlet for me and took me to a place to do my artwork. You have to understand that with the head injury, it took me a long time to talk and everything like that. And when I'm not doing any artwork at all, I feel very lost. If I couldn't do artwork, if the other side of my brain had been injured and I couldn't do artwork anymore, I don't think I would be here.
I think there's a lot of power in art, and there was a lot of power in your story. You know what? You're like one of the feistiest people I've ever heard. I love the fact that I feel like there's absolutely no filter with you. And I loved listening to when you talked, because you had such a loud, clear boom. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to meet this woman. You know? When you saw the film for the first time, what did you think about your portrayal? Did you say, yep, that's me?
Oh, definitely it was me. It's interesting because I'm not sure that I'm a truly feisty person, but for instance, my son kept saying, well, you're just so aggressive and feisty. And I wanted to say, hey, listen, boy, you don't know. When you have to come from blindness, you got to be out in front. If you're cowering in the corner, nobody is going to pay any attention to you at all. So that's part of it, but I used to think that I was very shy and that I couldn't talk, but that's not true at all. And you know what, the great thing I did, I took improv theater classes after I was blind, and that just clicked, like, you can do anything. We have to change our ways when things like this happen. And there are a lot of blind people who just kind of sit around and whine. And that wastes my work time. I want to take photos.
You're still creating and doing your photography. Do people say to you how and why and you can't?
Constantly. When they say, how can you take a photograph? They really mean you cannot take a photograph because you're blind. But they think things are in the camera. I think they think that if you don't know how to manipulate, if you can't see, but it starts in the brain. And it's not the camera is your servant. It does what you tell it to do. You might not think it changed because the camera doesn't change. I had to change in the way I used it. The stuff that comes out of the camera might still almost look the same, but later, and you're less afraid of taking a chance.
What do you want people to see of you when they look at this? What do you hope they take away?
What do I want them to see?
Yeah, I'll start with you.
Well, I want them to see, in a sense, what I was thinking in my brain, how I was composing in my brain, and that's why I used the camera and then had a print made. And then what I wished, and sometimes they talk to me about it, what I see there is this relationship to these two heads or these bodies, but can I started with that image, and did I succeed in getting the image? Or it could also be that it changed totally, and that might work too.
What do you want people to take away with from this about you?
You know, my whole thought process when I came back down was, and I was struggling with relearning the language, and I had to relearn. I mean, I was in a wheelchair for a while, and just all this stuff, all this physical stuff, which pissed me off, to be honest with you. And I used that to my advantage to keep working at getting better. And I remember going somewhere with these other people that had brain injuries, and I didn't like it. And I thought they were stupid, and that I came back home and I told Stephanie, I am not brain injured. And what I took from that, keeping angry and with that, was that I am going to continue to grow no matter what. And what I take from my artwork is that, first of all, when I start doing artwork, I have no idea what's going to come out. I have no idea. I might have some small thought process happening, but whatever comes out, comes out.
Now, these people came into your lives, you didn't know them, you're telling them your story, and you had to trust them. You're both brave, you're both inspirational, and the fact that you would trust two unknown people to tell your story and do it from the soul, God bless you all. I thought it was wonderful.
I have one thing to say about that. Erinnisse and Patryk are two of the most wonderful people in the world in my book. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely.
Patryk is the hands-on camera guy. He's very, very nice. And Erinnisse is the kind who comes into your world and tries to understand you and make it more, I don't know the right words, but make it more about who you really are instead of trying to mold you into some thought process she may be having. Am I right about that?
Absolutely right, because they were clear with me from the beginning that this would be a collaboration. We were not going to be objects of the lens. They would have their ideas and we would have ours.
And they took ideas from me, you know, not all of them, but some of them.
And this is the first time you two have met?
Me and you.
Katie and you?
Katie and I only met yesterday
Yeah. I
at the
about
first
wore
showing.
I heard you guys went hiking.
Yeah.
You're crazy. At least it was 117 degrees. That's why I don't have a house in Berkeley in the summer. You know, it's like it's 117 here. I want to tell you both that I was really hooked in right from the get-go with this movie. Your stories were rang true, and to trust them to tell your story was just a wonderful thing. And seriously, when the movie kind of quiets down, I'm going to find you both, and we're going to just talk about you as the artist, because there's wonderful stories here, and the work really is. We've seen a lot of work. We're going to follow up with each one of you individually and just talk about your artwork, because
Okay.
I think that's just great. And I don't want anybody to walk away thinking this was a movie about people with disabilities. This is a movie about people who say, you know what, something got in my way, I'm crawling over it, and here I am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.